You know, we've all seen it happen. It's almost like a car crash you can't look away from. A celebrity is on top of the world, and then suddenly they're in a total public relations freefall. It's this wild thing that just unfolds right on our screens. Today, we're going to figure out exactly why.
So, what's the deal? Why does this keep happening? Is it just a string of bad luck? Not really. Almost always, it's a series of missteps, a fundamental misunderstanding of the one currency that truly matters in the world of modern fame: public perception. All right, so here's our game plan. We're going to break down this pattern of self-destruction by looking at 4 really different case studies. We've got the star who basically sabotaged her own blockbuster, the incredible performer who just can't seem to connect with her audience, the actress who completely lost control of her own story, and a music superstar facing a massive credibility crisis. And then we'll pull it all together and see what it tells us about being famous today. Okay, first up, Rachel Zegler. After her amazing debut in West Side Story, she was on the fast track, right? Poised to be Disney's next massive star, the face of their huge live-action Snow White remake. And then the press tour happened, and boy, did things go sideways. This sentiment just exploded online. And why? Because during her interviews, Zegler's comments came across as super critical of the original 1937 classic. She called the prince a stalker, said the original love story was weird, and immediately started turning off the very audience Disney needed for this movie to be a hit. Now, to really understand the stakes here, you have to follow the money. The budget to just make this movie was a colossal $350 million. But wait, there's more. You have to tack on at least another $150 million for marketing. So what we're really talking about is a $500 million bet on this one single movie. And what was the result of that $500 million gamble? A projected loss of a staggering $115 million. It turned what should have been a guaranteed hit into a textbook example of what not to do. So, the story that really stuck with the public was this. It wasn't that the movie was bad. It was that the star's attitude, which came across as looking down on the very thing she was supposed to be selling, was the real reason it imploded. The lesson here? Know your audience and probably don't insult the product you want them to buy. And you know, that failure to connect with an audience leads us right into our next case. Let's talk about Cynthia Erivo. She is, by any measure, a generational talent. I mean, Oscar-nominated, a Tony winner, a Grammy winner. And yet, a series of public moments has created this growing gap between her and the very people who should be her biggest fan. You can kind of see a pattern here, right? She started out with everyone just blown away by her talent. But slowly, that got overshadowed by these other incidents that painted a very different picture. Criticizing a fan's art, that viral interview moment that just felt condescending, and then some really controversial casting choices. Each little thing added up to this perception of her being, overly self-serious and maybe a little out of touch. Our third case study is all about the raw power of narrative. The story of Amber Heard and her public battle with Johnny Depp, well, it stopped being about the legal details pretty fast. It became a war over who could win public opinion. And it's a really brutal example of what happens when you lose control of your own story. I mean, let's just look at the starting line. Johnny Depp walked into that courtroom with a huge reservoir of public goodwill built up over decades of beloved roles. Amber Heard, on the other hand, just didn't have that same level of career recognition. And that imbalance became a massive factor in the PR war that was fought online and all over the media. And at the end of the day, the outcome was a total collapse of her public image. It wasn't just that she was found liable for defamation. She was basically rejected by the court of public opinion. The fallout was immediate. She was isolated by the industry, her screen time in sequels was slashed, and she ended up making a quiet exit from Hollywood. It just goes to show you that in this day and age, losing the narrative can be way more damaging than losing in court. Okay, let's jump into our final case, Drake. For more than a decade, the guy has been one of the biggest commercial forces in music, like ever. But lately, a totally different story has started to take shape, one where being popular doesn't mean you have cultural authority anymore, and it's led to a pretty serious credibility crisis. This is the disconnect, right here. His streaming numbers are still through the roof. He is still massively, massively popular. But his credibility, his reputation as a tastemaker and a respected artist in the culture, that's perceived to be in a nosedive. The streams are there, but the respect, it's starting to crack. So what's causing this? Well, it's a mix of things. Critics point to lyrics that feel kind of emotionally immature for a guy in his late 30s. He's had these high profile feuds that ended up making him look insecure, and his public friendships with much younger stars have definitely raised some eyebrows. Even his personal style has become a target for memes, which all adds to this feeling that he's not setting the trends anymore, he's chasing them. So we've looked at these four very different celebrities and their very different problems. What are the common threads here? What do their stories really tell us about how fragile fame is in this totally connected world we live in? Let's connect the dots. You can almost see a clear four-step pattern emerge. It all starts with misreading your audience, just like Rachel Zegler did with Snow White fans. Then it moves to a failure to evolve your persona, which is what people see with Drake's perceived immaturity. And then you hit the big one, losing control of the narrative, which was the core issue for Amber Heard. And underneath all of it is that classic battle, the ego versus the brand, a fight that seems to define Cynthia Erivo's public perception.
Really, the big takeaway is this. The digital age has completely erased the distance between stars and their audience. Authenticity is key, but perception is absolutely everything. Every interview, every tweet, every public spat gets amplified a million times over, and any disconnect can completely shatter an image that took years to build, and it can happen overnight. The margin for error is razor thin. And all of this leaves us with one last really interesting question to think about. With the public now acting as judge, jury, and, meme maker, has the power dynamic totally shifted for good? Are we watching the end of the truly untouchable star, replaced by a new reality where every single celebrity is just one misstep away from becoming the next cautionary tale?